So I'll go on to a few examples now of regulatory failure and loss of control. First one I'll mention is in Bendigo. We had an EES in 1998, and in the panel's report, the proposed end use of the Culsholton site is the return to box ironbark forest while retaining the area for use as an historic reserve. A significant proportion of the proposed rehabilitation works will be completed during and immediately following decline development. That is, in the very early stages. They were proposing progressive rehabilitation. There's progressive rehabilitation 20 years later. What was originally on that site was forest, as you can see in the background. It's now a moonscape. There's been no progressive rehabilitation. We would maintain there was never any intent to do progressive rehabilitation. I can inform you that the Crown is now the proud owner of this site. The company is in the hands of the receivers. No rehabilitation is now up to the state to rehabilitate this site. We estimate the cost of rehabilitation to be $100 million. There may be $6 million in the rehabilitation bond. This is Costerfield, another example of what I call regulatory failure. This is the Brunswick pit at the Costerfield mine. The water sprays you see there are spraying water containing 50 micrograms of lead and 30 milligrams of antimony per litre. Lead is an irreversible neurotoxin in children. The ERC at Costerfield knew this water was being sprayed into the air. It was reported what was in that water. It was also known that there were children living within 200-300 metres of this pit. Yet the ERC, the Health Department, the EPA, Earth Regulation Resources, Council, all allowed that spraying to proceed. 2 years later, there were toxic symptoms in the community, and they started doing toxicological surveys of the area. What they found was there was lead everywhere. What they didn't do is tell anyone. For 2 years, those results were suppressed. 2 years later, when it was announced, or when the documents became public, the lead contamination was in, I think it was Appendix D. It was a 600-page document, about page 500, Appendix D. 50 pages into Appendix D, the lead exceedances were highlighted in a Excel table or a spreadsheet table with roughly 300 cells on it. That's the depth. You had to look into the report to find the evidence that there'd been an exceedance of lead and lead toxicity in the Costerfield community. I think this is a disgraceful failure of our regulators, and I've seen no reason or no evidence that they've improved in the 4 or 6 years since then. This is the Woodvale site, another site in Bendigo, 16 kilometres outside of Bendigo. The long axis of that site is about 2 kilometres and it's about 800 metres wide. Again, the Crown is now the proud owner of this site after the company went into receivership. This site contains 100 tonnes of the carcinogen insoluble arsenic. It also contains 200,000 tonnes of salt. That was pumped in water over a period of about 20-30 years, and It now needs to be rehabilitated, and as I mentioned before, there may be $6 million to do it. Our estimates it will take $100 million to clean this site up. You can see on this site, you can see the little red star. At that point, the concentration of arsenic is something of the order of 25 grams per kilogram. That's an extraordinarily high concentration of arsenic. You can see the yellow stars, that's local residences. The two yellow stars nearest that red star, children live there.
Mr. Parent, sorry, just to interrupt you. I just want to stop for a minute. We've just lost Mr. Ginnivan, so just hold that thought.
All right, sure.
Did you say 25 grams per kilogram?
25 grams per kilogram. It's an extraordinary amount of arsenic concentration, just where that star is.
And this was naturally occurring arsenic, which has been concentrated through the mining process, presumably?
Yes, it occurs in the water underneath Bendigo, and to mine in Bendigo, they have to pump the water out. And for 20 years, they pumped the water out to this site and let it evaporate, concentrating the arsenic and the salt. There's still water under Bendigo, and at the moment, to stop it leaking into all the creeks around Bendigo, we spend $4 million a year scrubbing that water to prevent it leaking into the creeks. At the 1998 EES, the panel was warned this was a likely consequence of mining. For reasons I can't understand, that warning was ignored. 20 years later, we've still got the problem. We're going to need to treat that water for the eternity. So we're looking at probably billions of dollars over the next 50, 100 years to scrub that water clean.
Thank you. I'll just get you to pause there. We'll just wait.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Parent, I believe you were talking about the yellow stars and the location of residence.
The yellow stars, yes. The yellow stars closest to the red star are houses that contain children. In summer, when these ponds dry off completely and become windblown, dust is known to be elevated, dust containing the carcinogen arsenic, soluble arsenic, which is even the worst form. It's soluble inorganic arsenic, which is the worst form of arsenic as far as carcinogenicity goes. In summer, when these dry out, dust is blown off there. 5 years ago, there was a study done of all the water tanks within 1 kilometre of these ponds. 78% of those water tanks contained some arsenic. This is a low arsenic area. The regulators thought that wasn't a problem and still maintain that's not a problem. The ERC requested the arsenic dust be measured. It took 4 years of vigorous representation by the community of the ERC to get that dust actually measured. When they started measuring the dust coming off these ponds, lo and behold, they contained arsenic. After 2 years of measurements, possibly 3, where it was clear there was arsenic coming off in breach of regulatory requirements, in breach of SEP 1191, EPA SEP 1191, they stopped ERC meetings. ERC meetings were just cancelled. there were no more meetings. Once the ERC meetings were stopped, that was in, I think, the last one was about March, June, between March and June 2019. Since then, we've had no dust results collected at this site. You've got 100 tonnes of carcinogen known to be going off site, and the regulators have not measured the dust on this site for 2 years and have not published dust results for 2 years. And there are children living within 200 metres of that site. I think that's regulatory failure. I've mentioned environmental review committees. I'll keep moving on that. I'm pretty well finished. I do have